Welcome to the next Briefings Direct podcast. Today we explore the changing role and impact of content marketing using the IT industry as an example. Just as companies now communicate with their customers and prospects in much different ways, with higher emphasis on social interactions, user feedback, big data analysis, and even more content to drive conversations, so too the IT industry has abruptly changed. There's more movement to cloud models, to mobile applications, to leveraging data at every chance, and they're also facing lower margin subscription business models. The margin for error is shrinking in the IT industry. If any industry is the poster child for how to deal with rapid change on all fronts, it is surely the global information technology industry. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this forward-looking discussion now on how nature of marketing is changing. Customer sharing, big data, and the rapid evolving technology industry are all coming together. We're going to find out how. With me here to explore how we can expect the IT industry to adjust and how the nature of marketing is impacting it along the way, we're here to develop new ideas with marketing and technology with our guest, Laura Krachnova, the founder and principal at Scratch Marketing and Media in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks for having me, Dana.
Laura, we've been, you and I, talking about marketing for years now. We're in an interesting field, and it's been such a dynamic time. I'm so glad you came to join me on this because I've got some interesting ideas about where technology is going and where marketing is intercepting, and they're both changing. They're both interdependent on each other in many ways. So let's start at a high level. Content marketing has proven to be very successful, and you and I have had a hand in this, creating compelling stories, narratives about what's going on and how people can learn from others as they go through problems and solve them has become a mainstay in marketing. Help me understand, from your perspective, why is content marketing so important? Why has it been so successful?
Well, I think there are a couple of reasons for that. I think the pace of change is tremendous now, so people are trying to get their bearings on what's going on in their markets, and a lot of times they need to get educated. What has changed is with social media now, information is a lot more immediate and transparent, and you can get it from many more sources than just the online presence of a company, for example. So the top-down model in marketing is changing, meaning we used to rely on companies to tell us how to think about the world. Now we can form our own opinions. So as we realize that the customer is in the driver's seat and they educate themselves and they make the right decisions about how to go about change, what companies are realizing is that they need to feed into that flow and be part of that discussion. So hence why content marketing has been so successful is because you become an educator, not just selling to people, and especially in IT.
And I think people have become much more accustomed to conversations rather than just a one-direction information flow, that being from the ivory tower or we're the seller, we're going to tell you what it is. Now people want to relate, they want to hear what others have to think. It's much more of an actual conversation.
Exactly, and I think what you're seeing is that now, if you look at any IT domain, it's interesting when we look at who's influencing a domain and who are the main voices in it, who are the voices that people consider experts. You pretty much consistently see that, yes, there's the reporters and the journalists and the analysts, folks like you, but then what we see is that there are a lot of C-level executives from IT companies who are becoming that kind of a voice as well. And that just points to the need for that ongoing conversation, the need for sharing at all levels of the buyer funnel and post the buyer funnel. Once people have bought into a solution, they need to make sure that adoption is there, that they're maximizing the investment. So the conversation is very important, and I think the immediacy now of us having access to folks and having the ability to exchange a few thoughts on Twitter, on LinkedIn, I think has changed the dynamic completely. So it's absolutely about conversations. It is about storytelling, but it is still mapped to the buyer's funnel, right? People are still educating. They're still looking at options. for a change or for a replacement, one or the other, until they select the people they want to work with. And it's usually people and brands. It's not just I want to work with this company. It's usually the people behind it. So we're moving more to a people economy.
Yeah. And as you point out, you can get to the real source of the knowledge nowadays. Publishing is available to anybody, whether they're tweeting, blogging, posting on Facebook, putting something up on their company website. Anybody who has something to say can say it. It can get indexed, and it can be made available to somebody who wants to hear about that particular topic. And most people now don't just sit back and wait for information to reach them. They're proactive. They go out, they start a search. They do hashtag searches on Twitter. They can do Google or Bing searches on the web. So it's much more here, I know something, I'm putting it out, and here's another case of someone, I need to know something, I'm seeking it. They come together on their own. The content makes that possible. The better the content, the better likelihood that those in a need to know and those in a need to tell come together.
Exactly. But I think you hit on something very important. Everybody can publish, and a lot of people are publishing. But yet, we're interested in a lot fewer people and following a lot fewer people in what they have to say. So the ability to publish is great, and I think it democratizes the means of how we communicate with each other and educate each other, but yet you still have to earn it. And this is very important. People who really are influential are usually domain experts, and they're there to help other people. So that's the other aspect of it that, you know, both companies and their marketing teams and their executives need to think about. You have to actively participate and show your expertise. It doesn't come for granted.
Yep. And there's another aspect to greasing the skids between the knowledge and the acquirer of the knowledge, and that is there's curation. There are people who point to things and give it credence and say, that's a good thing, you should read it, or that's a bad thing, don't waste your time, and that helps refine this. And
precisely.
Not only people, but there are machines doing the same thing. So there are algorithms, there are indexing, there's both human and machine aspects of winnowing down the good stuff and providing it to people in a need to know, and that's only going to get more powerful, more impactful.
Right. I'm sure you know about narrative science. I have this professional crush on this company for a few years now, but essentially they take data and then they turn it into storytelling. And I think this is phenomenal. Obviously, that's not going to replace some of the human storytelling that needs to happen, but some of the data storytelling will come from technology. And this is one particular application where marketing and technology come together to bring something completely new, something into life.
Yeah. So we can get knowledge through expertise, or we can get knowledge through experience, someone who's gone through it already and they're willing to share that with you. And if you're acquiring IT, it's super important to avail yourself of everything because it changes so rapidly and the costs are high. If you make a big mistake in how you're designing a data center, you're out millions of dollars, your products don't work, your top-line business people in the front office are going to come screaming down on you. You have to make the big decisions, and you have to make them correctly in IT. There's just the whole business is at stake now when it comes to IT. It's not just a service to the business. It is the business. So let's think about the IT industry in particular, and then think about how content marketing, as we've discussed, is powerful. How do IT people acquire content marketing? Do they get it through websites, emails, tweets? Is it delivered to them at a webinar that they opt into? How does content marketing reach somebody who's an IT buyer, Laura?
I think I think it depends on the IT buyer because we can't necessarily lump them together and say how does the IT buyer go about it. There are people with different needs, and it depends on their role. If you're a CIO or a CTO, there's a different mix of channels and sources you use. If you're on the dev or on the ops side and looking for specific solutions, you're going into completely different channels. For example, if you're a DevOps professional, you may be on Stack Overflow, and you might be seeking advice from other folks. You might be on GitHub and sharing open source code and getting feedback on that. If you're a CIO or a CTO, what we have found working with a number of different companies, be that global companies or maybe companies that are growing, is that they do seek their peers to validate what the peers are going through. So one of the best things that companies can do when they try to talk to the C-level is expose some of those connections that they already have from their customers and make sure that the customers are part of the discussion and they can chime in. Another important source of information for the C-level in IT would be folks like you, data analysts, and strategic system integrators like Accenture and Deloitte, because these folks are exposed to the kinds of challenges that a CIO would go through or a CTO would go through. So they have a lot to bring to the table in terms of risk mitigation, optimal deployment, maximization of the investment in IT. And making those connections and sharing those experiences, we've seen work really, really well. The other thing we've seen for C-level, let me just throw this in as well, is that, guess what? I mean, the C-level is still going on Google. They're still doing the searches, and we have compelling data across the board in any B2B complex enterprise sales environment that folks are self-educating as well. So it's not a question of either or. It's what's the right mix for each company depending on where people sit.
So there's a spectrum of content, some highly technical and defined on places like GitHub, that are germane to a technologist, and then there's that spectrum up from there to a higher level towards peer review of products, peer review of solutions, and then more business types of topics about what is strategic, what's the forward direction, how do I understand at an architecture level decision processes, and where can I go for more information to find out what's coming down the pike and then how to put it in place. Okay.
Precisely. Yep. Think about Spiceworks, right? I mean, they're probably at 5 million IT professionals at this point, and the community is there for a reason. So, again, with each particular, there isn't one size fits all. And one thing that we always recommend to folks, for example, if you're looking to develop an influencer strategy and approach in IT, it really depends on what domains you span. Because what you find is that even if you're doing mobile application development, the folks who are really influential and set the standards at that stage are somewhat different for the folks who are concerned with security in mobile app development. So there isn't necessarily one pool of influencers that you need to go to and develop a relationship and understand what's in their mind. It really depends on your domain.
So if you're a marketer and you recognize that quality content is super important, you need to have a spectrum of content. It needs to be some content that would be germane to a technologist that's highly detailed, how-to type of. You need to have peer review and stories, case studies, testimonial type content where the customer is telling what they've done and why it benefited them and what you can learn from that. And you also need to have higher level discussions with experts to help people chart the next course, the strategic level. So content needs to come across the spectrum. And we recognize, too, that the way in which people get that content might be through search, it might be through web, email, webinars, webcasts, reading certain online sites, listening to certain Twitter feeds or groups, or having a select group of people that you follow. All of that happens. But what's interesting to me, Laura, and here's my big question of the day, that all has to do with the web. And what we're seeing in IT is a rapid movement towards mobile apps, rather than just the web, and in many cases starting to overtake the web as to where people spend their time. So you're already, I'm sure, using a smartphone. You have mobile apps. You're not going on the web to find a cab. You're in an Uber app to find a cab. If you are looking for a restaurant review, you're not necessarily going on the web and doing a search. You're going into a specific app on Yelp or maybe OpenTable or somewhere else to find out where your restaurants are. You're going into Google Maps to find out how to get there. So more and more we're seeing on the consumer side people using mobile apps for more of their processes, for their inquiry, for their actual productivity. It seems to me that if that's the case, and then on the enterprise side, the B2E, that is, say, the business to employee side, we're seeing people using cloud services more and more, where it's a portal from 15 years ago that has morphed into more APIs that are on their way to be microservices, and they're using them in the context of either back office application activities, systems of record. They're using ERP apps, but they're becoming more granular, more mobile. And interestingly, we're also seeing big data analysis brought to the table so that we can provide process efficiency to people in the context of what they're doing, where they are, and how they're how they're actually operating in their day-to-day activities. Well, if that's all the case, and I believe it is, that we're moving more towards a mobile application, cloud services, API-driven world that leverages big data and analytics in order to put context into process, how does content reach people? Do we lose the ability to deliver content to people now, or do we need to have the content find them too?
It's I think the answer to your last question is both, but I do have a little bit of a different perspective on what you're describing. I don't know that we're moving to a mobile app experience necessarily, because when we think about apps and the examples you gave, take Yelp or Uber. Yes, they are best-of-breed applications that you use because these are the most frequently used applications. But what you're seeing is actually a digital transformation. And digital no longer means the web, as we know it, going online through your computer, but you're actually navigating on a mobile device. So it's this digital transformation that's happening. And the trend that we're seeing is aggregation. So it's not about one individual app, but it's more about, well, what's the flipboard within the enterprise, and you're seeing that sort of aggregation bubbling up to the top because information overload is a huge problem. People can't prioritize anymore. They can't toggle among those different applications. And, companies, for example, one of our clients, not to necessarily add a plug for them, but it actually is very germane to the discussion, Harmony does exactly that. So in those kinds of environments, what we're finding, and where I totally agree with you, is the ability to read and understand context so that you can support the user, be that an employee with an internal work experience or a customer externally, to support them to get the job done. So the role of content is actually merging with big data, because big data is helping us to understand context and say, well, what do we serve this person here? On the marketing side and the lingo side, it's more about now ongoing customer journeys. We'll think about the same thing on the employee side, ongoing employee journeys or partner journeys. Once you understand what a partner is trying to do, why are they here, what's the context, what's the most logical next step or the optimal next step, now content becomes this both an ability for people to find something, but also for marketers or product development folks. I think that those functions are emerging as well to deliver the right content in the right format so that the user can get the job done. So that's my perspective on that.
There's no disagreement for me on this issue of context to process, context to location, context to need for knowledge, all being much more granular and powerful going forward. But what I'm concerned about when I talk to developers, the vast majority of them are much more interested in a mobile-first, cloud-first world. They're not much interested in building what we used to think of as big honking applications in the enterprise. They're much more interested in how do I bring services together in context to provide a better productive outcome, and how can I leverage low-cost services and APIs and microservices from my cloud, your cloud, any cloud, they don't care which cloud it's from, in order to accomplish that. So it becomes, to me, on one hand, all the more important to have the ability to deliver content contextually into these processes, but at the same time, these processes are becoming fragmented. They're going across hybrid cloud environments. They include both what we call cloud and SaaS, and I'm not sure where the marketer now can get enough inference to support the injection of content appropriately. The way that's been done now is usually through the web, where we have links and we have code and we can do cookies. It's sort of like it's Web 1 mechanisms by which marketers are injecting content, but we're moving not only past Web 2, we're into Web 3 platform. Right? So to me, this is a question mark.
It is a big question. I mean, I don't know that there's going to be one mode of delivering what we're talking about or one approach or one framework. I mean, I'll give you one example. If you look at how web content management has changed, it used to be about managing pages and updating content. Now, web content management is becoming the marketing command center. Like if you look at a web content management system like Sitefinity, for example, now marketers can go in and they can build the customer journeys on mobile and on the web. So that they can inject the content that needs to happen there. The reason they can do this now is because there's this ability, the analytics that come from all of these customer interactions, of you actually creating cohorts of people as they're going through your web experience or online experience, and you know why they're there and what's the optimal path for them to get where they need to be. So you're seeing this happening, that this ability to distribute content, to push content now again to people, but in a much more contextual way. So there's going to be the pull and push, but the push is getting a lot smarter and very contextual.
Yeah. So it's incumbent upon us who are examining this marketing evolution in the context of the IT industry to create that spectrum of content, to make it valuable, to make it appropriate and not too commercial or crass, but useful. And at the same time now, we need to think about how do we newly get this in front of the right people at the right time. It seems to me that if I'm an IT company and more of my services, whether it's a B2B, B2C, or B2E, or all of the above type of service mix, I need to be thinking about ways that I'm going to communicate with my existing universe or market and move them towards new products and services as they need them in context to their process. Now, we think about this in a B2C environment in retail where I'm walking through Walmart, I have my smartphone on, and as I turn the corner, they know that now I'm interested in home goods, and they're going to start to incentivize me to buy something. Okay, that's kind of a understood mechanism by which my location and the fact that I've turned a corner and made a decision provides an inference that then they can react to with content or information. Okay, fine. But take that now to the B2B environment where I'm in a business setting, I'm in procurement, or I'm in product development, or I'm looking for a supply chain efficiency. I want to move into a new geographic location, and I need to find the means to do that, or I'm selling. All of those things also are like turning a corner in a Walmart, except you're in a business application, you're using cloud services, you're using a mobile device. So it seems to me that if I'm an IT vendor, that I'm going to want to have content or information that I can bring to that situation, perhaps even through an example of what other people have done when they face that same crossroads. So the content can be more important, more germane. These are multi-million-dollar decisions in some cases. Don't you think that big companies should be starting to make content with the idea that it's going to become part of their applications services, part of their cloud delivery services, and that they need to use big data and analytics to know when to inject it?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think that the difference between the example you just gave with Walmart and a B2B environment is that in Walmart, you don't need to understand so much about who the person is, what their role is in life, whether they work at an accounting firm or whether they're a physician, for example, a doctor, right? In a B2B environment, you do need to understand context, and context is, yes, the location or the point where they are in their journey, whatever that journey may be, their role as well, right? Because different people have different decisions to make. So it's a little bit more complex to bring context in a B2B environment, but it's absolutely essential. And I think you use the word inference. I think we always get enamored by the concept of big data. And guess what? Once the machines are there, they're going to analyze everything, and it's going to be this perfect world of marketing where everyone is aligned. Just look at throughout the history of marketing. We don't know ourselves as people. We individually don't know ourselves that well, let alone someone else getting to know us that well. So inference is very important, but it's going to be a balance between inferring what the person needs and allowing the person to customize this experience as well. So it's going to come both ways. Yeah. And I just see, some people going to one extreme or the other. Some people still believe that it's a relationship-based world, and therefore there's no need for a digital experience for their customers or for their potential buyers, which is actually never the case. Other people believe that it's all digital, therefore they don't need to touch them in any other way, which is rarely the case, especially in IT.
Yeah. I agree with you that in the B2B or B2E environment that it's more complex and the stakes are higher, but I would also suggest to you that the data is more readily available because I, as an employer, as a corporation, I can control what's going on. I know what that employee is doing. I know what apps they're using. I know what data they're seeking. Unless,
Dana, you're practicing rogue IT and you don't know that much.
Well, that's true. Now, if you go off the campus and you're using cloud services, you might lose some of that, but that's why you're going to want to have a relationship with that cloud provider, and they're going to provide a feed of data back to you about what's going on those apps from your very own employees. And so that's something that I encourage my people to do is if you have rogue IT, recognize that your employees are doing something that they find beneficial, but then make it official and create a relationship with that cloud provider so that you can get your data and you can cut your costs and buy in bulk and so forth. So that's a different story. That's a cloud topic.
Yeah.
We'll do another time. All right. So what I'm suggesting then as we begin to think about closing out this fascinating conversation is that you need to have content and stories and customers lined up that you can uncover their path to truth, their path to value, and have that content ready because not only are you going to be using it in webinars, webcasts, podcasts, blogs, pretty soon, if my hypothesis is correct, you're going to be using that content in the context of process and inside of applications and cloud services.
Yep, I agree with you. And maybe this is an opportunity because it is the way of the future. And, some people are more mature and others are less mature, but maybe we can bring other people into the discussion and see what other folks in the field think about. Where is content going, how to contextualize it, how to deliver it. I mean, one of the biggest questions is how do we scale this, right? You can still do a meaningful experience or create a meaningful experience one-on-one. It's hard to recreate that, even if your customers are 200, 500, or, 5,000 within the IT space.
You have to remember, too, that just recently we saw from Apple the Apple Watch. And one of the things that's important with the Apple Watch functionally is that it's very good at alerts and notifications. It can also detect a lot of context of what you're doing physically, location, and it can relate because it integrates to your phone, your smartphone, what you're doing with applications and cloud services. So wouldn't it be interesting if you're wearing an Apple Watch or equivalent and you're in a business setting and you're coming up against a problem that you might not even know yet, but all of these services working together, we're going to say that person's going to be facing a problem. They're going to need to make a decision. Let's put some information and some content and some use cases together for them that will help them as they face that situation to make a better decision. That's the kind of world I think we're heading toward.
Yep, absolutely agreed. And let's continue this conversation.
We're going to bring in some other people and continue this conversation. All right, before we sign off, Laura, tell me a little bit more about Scratch Marketing and Media, what you do, and why that's related to this discussion we've had today.
Sure. Scratch Marketing and Media is an integrated marketing agency. We help B2B technology companies with market growth. Sometimes that means helping the sales folks within IT companies, and sometimes it means working with the marketing folks on things like content marketing programs, PR, analyst relations, influencer relations, and social media.
And how could they find out more information about Scratch Marketing and Media?
You can go online at www.scratchmm.com.
Awesome. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been discussing the changing role and impact of content marketing using the IT industry and the great changes happening there as an example. And we've seen how the nature of marketing with customer sharing and big data and the rapidly evolving technology industry coming together perhaps gives us a bellwether as to what will happen among many other industries. So with that, I want to thank our guest. We've been joined by Laura Krachinova, the founder and principal at Scratch Marketing and Media in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Thanks so much, Laura.
You're welcome, Dana.
And a big thank you to our audience for joining this special Briefings Direct podcast on the changing impact of content marketing. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host. Don't forget to come back next time to Briefings Direct. We certainly enjoy you having the time to be with us, and we hope that you found this valuable too.